Thank you so much, everyone. I'm really grateful for your vulnerability and putting it out there. Our next panel is Disability and Culture, featuring individuals from Alaska, Hawaii, and Nevada. So we better be prepared to say aloha and put on our jackets when we're thinking about how cold it is in Alaska.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thank you for coming to our session. It's part of the Stop the Stigma conference, which is hosted by the community and Moxie Educational Services. At Stop the Stigma, we acknowledge the importance of person first language because language shapes how we understand one another. Person first language centers humanity over diagnosis or system involvement and reflects our shared commitment to dignity, respect, and equity. We also recognize that individuals may prefer identity first language, and we encourage speakers and participants to honor personal preference whenever possible. We would also like to begin with a land acknowledgement, which I will now share with you all. Although this conference is held virtually, we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples whose lands we occupy as we gather, learn, and collaborate. The community is headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the traditional homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation, the Menominee Nation, and the Potawatomi Nation, with enduring ties to the Ojibwe and Odawa peoples of the Council of the Three Fires. Moxie Educational Services is based in New Hampshire on the ancestral lands of the Abenaki and Pennacook peoples, whose histories, cultures, and sovereignty continue today. We honor their resilience, ongoing contributions, and enduring relationship to the land. This acknowledgement is only a beginning. We encourage all attendees to learn about the Indigenous nations whose lands they reside on and to support ongoing efforts toward Indigenous justice and sovereignty. I also have a statement about accessibility that I'd like to share with you all. Accessibility is a shared responsibility. Thank you for helping create a conference culture rooted in respect, care, and openness. ASL interpreters are provided for each session and cart captions are activated. And thank you, Ben, for putting all of that in the chat as well. Okay, for introductions, I'm going to ask all panelists to describe their appearance and background to support blind and deaf-blind attendees. I'll model this first, and then I'm going to invite each of the panelists to do the same. So my name is Callie Ward. I'm with the community. I'm a white woman with wavy blonde brown hair, wearing a black sweatshirt with books and a plant in the background. Larry, would you like to go next?
My name is Larry Plumley. I'm a white man, 57, bald-headed, slender, with a black shirt. I spent 34 years in the Department of Corrections in Nevada. I received a degree from Western Nevada College, and I'm working for a degree from Truckee Meadows Community College. Thank you.
Amazing. Barbara?
My name is Barbara Mongar. I'm a white woman in her early 60s, brown hair, glasses, heavier set. I am in my home office, so I have a blurred background.
Okay, our third panelist is a student from Hawaii. Would you like to introduce yourself in whatever way you feel is appropriate?
Good morning. I'm a Shamanat student here incarcerated in Hawaii. I'm Hawaiian, American Indian, Portuguese. I'm an amputee in a wheelchair. I got pretty bad eyes, and I'm born and raised on Maui, here in
Thank you
Hawaii.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being here with us today. I'm really excited to hear from you all. I have a set of five or so questions that I'll be sharing, but really this is a roundtable discussion format, so I'll also be doing my best to pop in and ask some follow-up questions here and there and help put everyone at ease in responding to one another. We've all had the opportunity, I'm really grateful for, to have chatted a bit already. Um, so I'm really excited to hear more about the experiences and insights from our three amazing panelists. To open the conversation, since we are from three very different states that at the same time have some features in common, I thought we could open by framing the discussion from the perspective of lived experience in these places. So, Nevada, Hawaii, and Alaska. So, my first question related to that is how does the culture of your state shape how people understand disability, incarceration, and stigma? And relatedly, what beliefs or norms do you think most influence the community attitudes where you live? Is there anyone who would be eager to jump in first?
I think in Nevada, it's a lot of there's a separation between a mental disability and a physical. And they see the physical disability and they try to address that. But the mental disability is overwhelming for the prison system and for society. And when you get out, there aren't services provided because Nevada's so large. Maybe if you're in Las Vegas, but I know a guy that just got out with one foot in a wheelchair and he had no reentry services for handicapped. And if it wasn't for his church, and I'll give a shout out for the churches, he had a church sponsor who found him a place to live. He would be in a wheelchair, probably homeless. And I just think there should be reentry services for the disabled that right now they're just not meeting the need.
Let's see.
Or our student from Hawaii, anything you'd like to share from your perspective in your states?
Well, when I was on the outside, always been on the outside. I'm in here, my first time in a place like this, and the stigmatism concerning incarceration, I I never noticed any stigmatism towards incarcerated people from my experiences of being when I was out. But being handicapped and living normally, I always had the public always seemed helpful. Everybody always helped. Everybody always participated in offering help. And what's that? The state accommodated services like SNAP and welfare and all of that. They yeah, had no problems acquiring any of that. But I can see the standpoint from people being released and not knowing where to go or what to see or who to see. Yeah, that'd be kind of difficult. But we got programs that send people out to society in here that actually provide the people that are leaving with lots of help and direction from what I've seen by being in here where I'm at. So that's pretty great.
Well, I already, based on your response and Larry's response, have a follow-up question, but I want to give Barbara an opportunity to share first.
For Alaska, we have a lot of different cultures. It depends on the region. Each tribe has its own unique culture and traditional values. Some cultures actually ignore and disregard disabilities and or reentry altogether. And then there are also other cultures that have a process in place to banish the individual that was incarcerated for short or long periods of time, depending on the type of crime that they committed. Others provide supports through means of utilizing past trauma to defend present negative behaviors. Most all Alaskan cultures, though, differ from the westernized culture in that they want to fix the root causes of the new now negative behaviors and not just consequences and quick fixes. Some Alaskan cultures have learned how to advocate, but because care and incarceration occurs far from the rural places, there's a limited amount of support that can be offered. This can lead to other regions stepping in for tribal members if they're incarcerated in a different area.
Mm. Yeah, so that touches on my follow-up question. We'll leave it to the three of you, of course, to share your perspectives of, well, Alaska and Hawaii, I've never been to, so I have no idea. Nevada, I actually grew up there, so I know a little bit, or at least better than Hawaii and Alaska. I have a sense of the land, the ecosystem, the culture, the people. So I'm really interested to hear, in thinking about what I know about how Nevada is so rural. Over 75% of the population is concentrated in one county in the south of the state, which of course is where Las Vegas is. So over 75% of the population is there. You can imagine the rest of the state is much less densely populated. So thinking about this in comparison to the two states I really am not familiar with at all, Hawaii and Alaska, but which we of course do know are island, rural. Thinking about our panelist from Hawaii's response, there could be a sense of very tightly knit communities sometimes in some of these places.
It's
So thinking about, oh, go ahead.
it's pretty closely tight knit, and from what I observe of being in here and also by living out there, when you step out, it's how much you want to achieve that you can actually go and pursue everything yourself because all you do is ask questions to the right people and they'll guide you in the right directions. It's not because it's really small.
Mm.
I guess that makes Hawaii able to do that.
Mm.
And then I lived in Nevada for 5 years. So when I was there, I wasn't handicapped and I worked. So, and then I did fall into a state of depression. And my wife and we found me some counseling, but we had to search really hard for that. So that that was an experience
Mm.
searching for the help that I needed at that point in time. Yeah.
Right, totally. Yeah, so thinking about these different, but perhaps in some ways similar rural island, tightly knit, my follow-up question for you all is about stigma. Does it tend to be stronger for returning citizens with disabilities, or does the support tend to be stronger? And what do you think makes the difference?
Well, I haven't experienced it yet, so I can't have no way to answer that.
I believe it depends on your disability. For mental health, there's a stigma that are they going to reoffend? Uh, the reentry programs you're not even aware of until you're released. And a lot of times, if you don't have support, you're right back in the prison system again. The parole office is set up to supervise you, basically not lift you up. And not on them, they're overwhelmed in the state of Nevada because it's so large. They have so many people to supervise. It's not the parole offices, but what they need is like a community resource. And there's all these reentry programs starting up, but a lot of them aren't for disabled mentally or physically. I was lucky. I'm a veteran, and the Veterans Department, you can complain all you want about them, but they stepped up to the plate, provided housing, provided mental health. They gave me the resources to succeed, and now I own my own house. Truckee Meadows Community College offers justice involved programs and tuitions that allow you to uh, get mental health, go to college, get a degree. But a lot of these people aren't aware of these programs. And in the rural counties, they don't have these programs. So I think it's if your stigma is mental health, the way Nevada is the shoot first policy, Absolutely. They just think you're going to reoffend and you're garbage. But in maybe Vegas or Reno, because it's more modernized, I think there's almost a better understanding.
I agree with Larry. I think it depends on the disability itself. I think mental health and substance abuse disabilities are difficult sometimes, and stigmatized to a point. And then I do think it's also difficult for people with physical disabilities to get the assistance. Like you said, unless you're a veteran and the veteran, VA does step up. But if you're not a veteran, it's really hard to get the assistance you need. It's out there, but you have to know who to ask and where to go. And it's just trying to figure out who to go to is difficult at times.
Like here in Hawaii, if you have mental health issues, you just show up at the emergency room and they they guide you straight to being able to get the help that's needed.
Mhm.
So that's pretty unique.
Mhm. Yeah, access is such an important element, right? Like, first, do the resources exist in the first place? And then, second of all, as Barbara was speaking to, what are your needs in terms of being able to actually access those? Which ties into my second question about isolation. So, in all three states, isolation plays a major role through geography, distance, perhaps limited services, or other difficulties with access to resources. How do you all see isolation shaping incarceration for disabled people, and how does it complicate reentry?
Well, if I'm going to look at it at the Hawaii's point of view, it's the costs because it's really expensive here. And if they get re-entered and they have no way of establishing, even trying to get back into society, not being able to afford the costs, I think, the biggest challenge.
In Nevada, most of the population are centered in two different cities, but for economic reasons, they build prisons in these faraway cities for employment, basically, you could say, like Ely, Lovelock. So your family support. I know somebody that lives in Carson and drives every day to Los or every weekend or once a month, whatever it is, to spend 2 hours with her son. And that's a 7 or 8 hour drive. And family support is important. 34 years without my sister, I wouldn't have been able to survive in the prison system. And that separation, now they have the tablets finally, and you can have video chats. But up until the last year, Nevada was far behind everybody on that.
And then I live on the island of Maui, and then where I'm at is on the island of Oahu. So my family has to basically fly to see me, and that happens once a year. So that pretty much sucks.
In Alaska, we have that problem too. Most of the time, people are incarcerated far away from their homes. It could be hundreds to thousands of miles. They might have to fly to be able to visit the people that are incarcerated. And right now, we do not have tablets available. We are getting that possibly in the future because we passed a legislation that will allow it, but we don't really have the funding right now to beef it up. So we don't have tablets, and it's hard to make the phone calls sometimes. So communication with family members are really difficult. And then when they do release from prison, some of the communities, they can't go back to their home community because the supports aren't there. They don't have mental health treatment there, or they don't have substance abuse treatment, or even PO, parole is not available in that area. So they have to stay in the community they were arrested in without any kind of family support, without any support from people that they know in their community.
Hmm. I have a related question that I would love to hear you all elaborate a bit on. You're touching on it already. What does family separation look like in your states when someone is incarcerated, specifically or especially for disabled people? And how do you see the culture shaping how not just families, but communities cope or step in?
I've seen the church step in a lot of places and provide support. And I'm not a religious person, but I got to give it to these churches that go into the prison systems because they provide a type of family unification that's not provided, especially with people. Most incarcerated people have alienated their family either through drug use or the type of crime they've committed. And family support or some type of moral support, it helps build you up. It makes you a better person. And people change over time. And without that support and your isolation, you just you wallow in your own misery.
I see the same thing here. I mean, like I said, a lot of times the family support isn't available, but we do have church groups going in. We have reentry services available. So as you know, if we can let them know that there are supports out there, I think it goes a lot easier for people that are getting out. It's just whether they want to reach out and use these supports that are provided.
And for me, I sit in here because somebody said something that put me in here, and it can drive me crazy. And I have my family support, and we're still working on this case. At, but I don't see anything getting resolved for another 4 or 5 years because that's how fast the system moves, and with these types of situations, and just basically the slow moving system. So yeah, I'm just fighting to get my life back, and I have lots of fellowship, I have lots of family support, and all I gotta do is sit in here, be patient, so that my family and I can get some funds together to get some good representation.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand the communication and support pieces are so invaluable. Thank you all for sharing those perspectives with us. Um, Thinking back to your comments on resources and what's available for people, how would you say that cultural attitudes, as well as the geographic realities that we've talked about, the travel distances being what they are, needing to fly between islands, so how do cultural attitudes and geographic realities impact whether disabled people uh, receive the appropriate accommodations or support that they need, both inside facilities and after release?
I don't think in Nevada, I think the problem is you have all these competing interests in Nevada. You have, the public thinks you're doing too much. The inmates don't think you're doing enough or anything. And then the prison is saying, hey, we're doing everything we can. But the problem is when you transition from in the prison system, you start to move out. If you're in a rural area, there aren't reentry programs. And if they are, you're not aware of them. Like I said, disability, they don't consider mental disability a disability. So all they see is if you're handicapped, you might be able to get services. But in these outlying areas, all you get is ostracized. And I think that's a real problem with our judicial system is there has to be a transition to reentry to build somebody up so they don't reoffend.
And for me, it's just about getting out, reactivating my social security, have place to go. I got lots of family support. So for me, it's easy. But for other people with the challenges of not having nothing, I can see them having a really hard time, no matter what way I look at it.
Um, I reached out to the DOC, Department of Corrections, for this question, and they told me that each individual is screened on intake when they're going in to assess their medical and accommodation needs. And then assistive mobility devices such as wheelchairs or walkers are issued as clinically indicated. And they also said that when appropriate, a personal care assistant, typically another inmate, can be assigned to the individual to help them with the work details and to be their support while they're incarcerated. Once they're released, um, the incarcerated accessibility services are available. They're just difficult to get in rural communities, like I said. So they sometimes they have to stay in the community that they were incarcerated in if they want to get some of these supports.
Thanks so much for that research and for sharing that. Um, to our other two panelists, is there anything in what Barbara just said that you'd like to follow up on, or that perhaps resonated with you?
When they talk about intake classification, they have that in Nevada, but it's all they're trying to do is get you from the intake unit to general population. There used to be like a mental health unit. Now in Nevada, if you're a medical handicap, you're a flat yard restriction, you can only be on 1 yard in Las Vegas or 1 yard in Reno, no matter where your family lives. And there's a they call it a wheelchair housing in Carson City. Uh, but they still don't affect disabilities so much. They basically just put you on the yard and you're subjected to whatever you're subjected to. I remember when there wasn't even an ADA. Recently, they've started, wheelchair accessible. But before lawsuits, Nevada really didn't even have a wheelchair accessible unit. You see these guys being pushed in the mud in a wheelchair, and it was disheartening. So hopefully they're moving towards the future.
Well, they picked me up in Yerington, and when I got in there, my cell had my own shower, had all wheelchair access. It was pretty nice there up in Yerington.
Oh, that's
Mm.
Lyon County. That's
Yeah.
what county I'm in.
Okay. Nice. But here in Hawaii, it's actually regular stuff that's been converted, which is really uncomfortable. In the quad itself, there's two ADA cells, and then the rest is regular population. So I live within a regular population cell instead of an ADA cell. So it it's pretty challenging here where I'm at. Yeah.
I'm keeping one eye on the chat, wishing that I could give a heart or a thumbs up to these, but I guess as host, I don't have that permission. But shout out to everyone in the chat. I'm appreciating all of your comments. Keep it coming with the questions. There's the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen on the toolbar where we'll collect those, and I'll share questions with our panelists as we approach the end of this panel. I have a couple more questions first, though, before we do so. So Ben just shared a comment in the chat. One of the biggest indicators of successful reentry is a strong support system, which all three of you have been speaking to today. That disappears when you have to deal with that distance, and all three states deal with this in a traumatic way. As we've heard from your comments and insights, of course, this is true. I want to also think about resilience in the face of those traumatic ways of dealing with this and how that ties into cultural identity as a source of strength. So, in your experience, what are some cultural practices or maybe community values or traditions that might support resilience and cultural identity as a source of strength uh, for for people navigating these issues? And I realize that's not a question we previously discussed, so I want to give everyone a moment to digest that, and I'm happy to repeat it. Basically, I'm
That's a
thinking
hard one in Nevada.
about the challenges and trauma that Ben, mentioned in the chat, which you all are speaking to, and I'm thinking about how our cultures and traditions can also be, um, yeah, a source of strength or help feed into resilience. I know Larry mentioned not being religious, but recognizing the church, for example, or other religious or faith-based services or organizations. So that got me thinking about other elements of our Nevada, Hawaii, Alaska identities and how those might be sources of strength or resilience for dealing with the isolation, the distance, the trauma.
The
In
problem
Alaska,
with Nevada, oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Barbara. Go ahead.
if they're released in a community that has a tribe, they can go to wellness circles,
Hmm.
and that actually is very helpful. I've been told they have wellness circles with families, or just with males, or just with females. So it just depends on where they, what they want to attend. But like I said, if they can't go back to their community, then they'd have to hook up with a different tribal community in the area.
Hmm.
The problem with Nevada is when you talk about culture, that's a group of shared values. And in Nevada, it's so transient.
Hmm.
There are no real shared values. Perhaps the church, it has a big Mormon community and other Christian faith-based. But outside of that, the shared values, you do have your indigenous population, but there aren't shared values. So that's not type of support system. Whereas most states have, I don't know, they do have common ground. But in Nevada, that's non-existent because you have all of your gamblers and then they lose all their money, then they're incarcerated because they either drugs or alcohol or theft to support their gambling habits. So that I don't see that cultural identity coming through in Nevada.
Hmm.
Well, growing up in Hawaii, here in Hawaii, it's a really tight culture. I've always grown up and learned that we always gotta take care of one another, love really hard on one another, and no matter what a person does, right, wrong, you still love them hard. And that's how I grew up. We left our cars unlocked, houses unlocked. We ran, as kids, we ran all over and wild through the neighborhoods, and no parent had to worry about their kids because every one of them took care of their kids as they were their own, even though they were the next door neighbors. The whole neighborhood took care of each other.
Hmm.
So that's how I grew up. That's how we were raised here in Hawaii. It's really close and tight knit. And as I now I'm an adult, a lot of that disappeared, but you still have bits and pieces of it. It's solid as long as you're a part of the Hawaiians, right? The culture. And
Hmm.
then I moved to Nevada. I got married, moved to Nevada, and I'm con I'm in construction. I'm a truck driver by trade. And then we met the Hawaiian community in Reno. So it's like we never left home once we got connected with the culture again. So even though it's out of Hawaii, here in Hawaii, it exists. The Hawaiian culture exists afar and at home here in the islands. So as long as people that are going to be leaving the system and trying to get back into society, if they're connected, they shouldn't have any problems. But I can see the people who are not connected and are transplants, they might have a real difficult time.
Hmm. Barbara, you look like you had a follow-up comment about Alaska, maybe?
No, I think I agree with them though. If they can't get connected, then they have a rougher time. But
Yeah.
the the best thing is if they can get connected back with, if not their tribe, then another tribe that will take them in and help them.
Hmm. Okay, I'm seeing more great comments in the chat. With about 5 minutes before Q&A, I have one more question. That's also somewhat more, shall we say, positive or forward-looking. If you could shift one cultural narrative about disability or incarceration in your state, what would it be? What could policymakers, practitioners, or mainland, thinking in terms of Alaska and Hawaii, what could policymakers, practitioners, or mainland audiences, for example, do better?
I love an answer the panel before this had about pre-entry, where you begin to build your future while you're incarcerated. And I'm not sure, I think her name was Kelly or Amanda, I'm not sure which. Don't get mad at me, but she was talking about how they've started services to train and educate for the future before it's even a reentry program. And if you could start a program like that where you're pushing towards the future and you give somebody hope and you give them education and you show them support systems, I would love for that type of narrative to be put in real play in the Nevada Department of Corrections, where you can look towards the future. You know, right now you have Silver State Industries, which is the prison work program, but that's a very small portion of the population, 15,000 people, and they only have what, 400 workers or less. But it does train you for the future. But most people don't have those benefits, especially the rural prisons.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to one of my coalition members who was from Connect Tribe for this answer, and she stated that she would like people to realize that not all natives are drunks and not all drunks are natives. But she also said on the other end of the coin that there is a high rate of children born with fetal alcohol syndrome, and there is limited knowledge on how to care to these children in the rural areas. So they get placed in foster care placements at a high rate, and are from broken homes and lose their culture and generational trauma. And so she feels that if there was some early interventions put in place to support this, there'd be less juvenile and adults entering the system or being born with substance abuse disabilities.
Wow. Um, Thanks for collecting that. And on our behalf, please tell her thank you for sharing that.
I will. Thank you. It was Jessica from Connect Tribe.
Cool. Yeah, I also saw people in the chat talking about how often when we're having conversations about the Western US or the West Coast, it's always California or maybe Oregon. And I again can't speak to how it is coming from a place like Alaska or Hawaii, but I do know as someone from Nevada, everybody I meet outside of the state reacts, "Oh, you're from Nevada? I've never met anyone from Nevada. What is it even like there? Is it all just Vegas and casinos and insanity?" And I think also, so aside from that sense in the popular imagination of what these more unknown states are like, there's also not as strong a sense of distance. Everything on the East Coast, for example, is so compact, and I've often had people ask, "Do you go to Vegas a lot when you were growing up? That must be what, a 2 hour drive?" When in fact it's more like 8 hours or more if you live farther north than I did. So just appreciate everything you're sharing about these unique states that we've grouped together for the purposes of this panel today. Larry, our student from Hawaii, would you like to respond to that question about shifting a cultural narrative about disability or incarceration in your state, or what you think policymakers or other audiences could do better or should know more about these places and issues?
Mhm. For me, it would be come and experience it. I think that'd be the best teacher.
Well, that would teach them.
I know.
But
It's hard to explain. It's hard to
yeah,
explain. Yeah.
but you also have the justice system, which in the rural counties is so right wing. I don't want to say right wing because that's political, but so conservative that they issue sentences that are obnoxious
Ridiculous.
compared to the crime. And like Vegas, it seems almost more, I don't want to say compassionate because that's not the word, but a lot of times the judicial system isn't fair, whether what they have regional bias depending on where you're sentenced in the state. And it's crazy. I would like to see some conformity and some common sense thinking for criminal reform.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. I see people in the chat reacting. Thank you all. I am going to see if I can pull up under the Q&A between there and the chat some questions. Okay, so we have, yes, thanks, Ben. I found it and I will scroll up in the chat to find, I know there was a great question somewhere about homelessness. Before I find that one, here's a question specific to Hawaii. They ask, regarding education in Hawaii, how has it been for you compared to those without disabilities? I think the question is
Um,
getting at what is it like for people in Hawaii with disabilities or not?
well, I'm here incarcerated and I'm working on a bachelor's degree and an associate's degree at the same time, basically. I got to get the associates first, and all I had to do was show up, fill out the paperwork, and now they're getting me educated. So it's all about the individual and how much they want to pursue.
Hmm.
Hey, can I give a shout out? Western Nevada College started a prison college program, and they get because the prison isn't providing funding. They've got private funding to provide scholarships for inmates, and that's how I got my scholarship from Western Nevada College in Carson City. And they went into the prison system and they're actually offering college classes, and it's not costing the prison anything. And I just think that was a great program that they started, Deborah Conrad at Carson City, Western Nevada College. And I just want to say thank you so much for giving inmates an opportunity to build forward.
And then let me continue a little bit. And then working with my disabilities, I have a hard time seeing. So the professors and the program, um, they do me printouts so that I'm able to take it back and read it myself. And then I have people who actually push me up to the learning center. So I have transports for that. So they get me to and from, and they accommodate my handicaps.
That's good to hear on both counts. Thank you for sharing that experience. And thanks for the Nevada shout out. Okay, so our next question I found here, somebody commented, I'm just going to read it like I did with the last one. I know homelessness is on the rise in these states. Thinking about the distance imposed here from one's community and how that can impact housing post-release, do you all have thoughts about how the intersection of disability uh, with decreased access to housing could be addressed, especially if someone has been distanced from their culture?
Well, being here in Hawaii, everything is so limited, so that's a rough one.
Hmm.
34 years ago, I didn't even see a homeless population when I was out. And when I got out in August of 2024, that's all I see in Reno and in Las Vegas. And it's just amazing that there are so many homeless, and I'm not sure how they address it. I know there's some programs like the Hope program that has like 200 beds or something like that, although they're not, I don't think they're ADA compliant, but I'm not sure how to address it. It's just seems to be on the rise now.
And
Hmm.
then because the cost of everything in Hawaii here in Hawaii is so expensive, I know families out there. I know friends of mine out there. They got full-time jobs. They got families, but they got to live in tents because they can't afford a place.
Hmm.
So it's rough here.
Hmm. And then the homelessness becomes criminal.
Homelessness keeps growing, yeah, and then things turn into criminal, right?
In Alaska, a lot of the more rural communities don't have like homeless shelters at all. So people have to go into Anchorage, or into the bigger cities, if they want to go to a homeless shelter per se.
Mm.
But we do have certain things in place, especially for people being released from prison. We have a reentry housing program where we can help them with their first like 2 or 3 months of rent. Um, that we received a grant for, so we can help with hopefully them not getting out and going straight to homelessness.
Mm. Do you have a sense of, uh, for those of us who aren't familiar with Alaska geography, when you say go to the big cities, like how far that would be, and could you elaborate on that? Like, what does that look like for someone who's never been there?
Well, the big city from where I am is about an hour to an hour and a half. I'm out in the Matsu, and we're getting bigger, but we're still not considered like one of the major hubs. But it just depends. I mean, we're a big spread out state. So it could be 2 or 3 hours. You might have to fly there,
Mm.
depending on if you're in a rural community that's not on the road system.
Mm.
So it really depends on where you're at,
Mm.
how far the big city is.
Mm. Thanks. Okay, looks like I have another question. Oh, no, false alarm. Okay. Any other questions that I overlooked in the chat? Did I miss any for our panelists? I'm seeing so many comments and links and people making connections and expressing gratitude.
Well, some people haven't in Nevada. I noticed that the police associations or the police departments are starting mental health programs so that you don't have, when you're on site with somebody with a mental health, they can notice it ahead of time in training. And I noticed Lyon County and Washoe County have started these programs to try and offer support and alternate sentencing for a lot of these people. And I think that is a positive step for law enforcement.
Hmm. Okay, thank you. As Ben just posted in the chat, everyone, please stay tuned for our next panel. I'm also looking for something to post in the chat as both a thank you and a request. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to complete an evaluation that I'll post the link to in the chat, because your feedback really helps us shape future conferences and events. Oh, okay, Ben just posted it for me. Thank you. I have so many tabs open right now and they're getting hidden behind the Zoom window. Thank you all so much for your time and your comments. It was, just speaking for myself, so cool to learn more about things I wasn't even aware of about the state that I grew up in and about two other states that I really appreciate the opportunity to learn more about. Um, Thanks to everyone in the chat for your enthusiasm and questions and comments to one another and for sharing information to help us all collaborate and connect. Really appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.